Okay, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We acknowledge that the Students' Union is situated upon the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. I have received two regrets for tonight, one of them from Director Bottinger. He will attempt to join the meeting later tonight, but due to work conflicts, he cannot meet us at this time. He said that he would expect to be here at around 6:30 or so. And I have received a regret from Director Hashmi. They cannot join because of a work conflict. As mentioned in the email, we will not be going over the monitoring reports for GP2H, 2A, and AL2A and AL2H. Can I have a motion on the table to remove these from the agenda package? All right. Motion by Vice Chair Phillips, seconded by Director Abu-Rashid. Would you like to speak to your motions?
I'm okay.
Any discussion on the matter? Are there any abstentions? Are there any sorry, I'm having a brain fart. I forgot the word. Are there any oppositions? Sorry about that. As I see none, the motion passes with unanimous consent. So now these have been stricken from the agenda package. Can I have a motion that the board of directors adopt the consent agenda as presented? Okay, motion by Director Abu-Rashid and seconded by Vice Chair Phillips. Would you like to speak to your motions?
I'm okay.
Any discussion on the matter? Are there any abstentions? Any opposition? As I see none, the motion passes with unanimous consent. Next up, are there any conflicts of interest to be declared tonight? Okay, I'm not sure if I have to declare a conflict of interest for the ad hoc honorarium committee, but if there is any discussion on that, I won't be participating because the honorarium pertains to my role. So that's the only conflict of interest that I have. Are there any other conflicts of interest to declare for tonight's meeting?
Not sure if I have to declare it as a conflict of interest, but in our discussion for the fall meeting schedule, I might just abstain from that discussion, and I think we're going to discuss that a little bit in camera later.
All right, thank you very much, Director Faciola. Next up, we'll be moving on to the meeting minutes from the June 13th meeting. Can I have a motion on the table to approve the meeting minutes from the June 13th Board of Directors meeting? All right, motion by Director Abu-Rashid and seconded by Vice Chair Phillips. Would you like to speak to your motions? Any discussion on the matter? Are there any abstentions to the vote? Any opposition? As I see none, the motion passes with unanimous consent. And now onwards to comments from the chair of the board and CGO, aka myself. So hello, everybody. I hope you're all having a great start to your week. In terms of the updates I don't have many. I don't expect this meeting to last very long. What I would like to talk about are some email troubles. I recognize that some directors are having email troubles accessing their email, accessing Teams. We're working on that as much as we can. Please contact me if you have any troubles. We'll sort that out right away with operations and with whoever we have to talk to. And in addition, we have the Undergraduate Student Alliance that wishes to visit us in the fall. I did not include this in the fall schedule. However, I will include it once we figure out and finalize it completely. So that's it for me, and we will now go on to comments from the President and CEO. President Symington, take it away.
How we doing? So I've got a few things tonight. So right now, kind of at the highest level, myself and my VP of Government Stakeholder Relations have kind of been taking initiative to go and develop relationships with internal partners for a couple different reasons. Just because we think I've kind of been following this philosophy of, if we can establish like really good relationships with our internal partners, like such as athletics, Department of Residence, et cetera, et cetera. There's a few opportunities to develop like collaborative initiatives and recruit volunteers. So that's something I've been prioritizing at a high level. Beyond that, we've been beginning to develop conversations to kind of have a more tangible idea of what House Olympics, our Gender Violence Rally, and our Health and Wellness Month will look like. March for O Week has been ordered, and the intention behind it, again, is to give it all away through a volunteer incentivization program that we're currently working on right now. And then we're also working to refine the intentions for the 2-4 lounge and the turret for next year, so they can be designed accordingly. So we might be looking at some new furniture in there come September. And then beyond that, not too much beyond that. Honestly, I think just working on a few things with respect to food bank and ERT and what those will look like next year and any potential amendments there. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got at the high level. So I will pass this off to Executive Director Champagne.
Technically, we need to see if there are questions for you first. And that, yeah.
Right. Are there any questions for President Symington? Yes, Director Baruchid.
You mentioned that you and the VP of Government and Stakeholder Relations were discussing with our internal partners. Would you be able to expand more about that, or would that have to be in camera? That's the first part of my question. The second part of my question relates to what the plan is for the student union and your VP of GSR to build connections with local government, whether they be city, provincial, and federal, to advocate for student issues. And of course, as Brantford board member, I will ask if there will be any of that type of involvement at the Brantford level, not only at the Waterloo level.
So yeah, for your first question, I think the best way I can go about it is just providing an example. And obviously, like grain of salt, because like what we're working on is like we're doing our best to like try and develop it, but like execution is another thing. But so for example, like we're working with athletics because a need there was expressed that there isn't enough space for like enough intramural teams to register. So one of the ideas we thought through establishing a good relationship with them would be running intramural tournaments on the weekend for like any team to just sign up, even if they're not a pre-existing team for that sport. And then, to tie it like back to the SU, there could kind of be like a Wilfs after party at the end of it. And then but like, that's just one specific example. Like we have a few other ideas with how we want to work with athletics specifically. We have a few other ideas with how we want to work with the other departments. And it's kind of been going, I think I'm getting sick of myself saying this, but it kind of just follows the idea that, if we're able to like if we're able to like connect with these different departments and work together on different initiatives, the way I see it is like, if the tide rises, all the ships float higher. So yeah, does that kind of answer your first question?
Yes, thank you.
And then for your second question, do you mind just going back and
Yeah. So my second question in relation to you and your VP of GSR relates to what the plan is. I know that this is a little bit on a tangent, but what your plan is for building relationships with the local government officials. So whether they be at like the city level and at the municipal, provincial, and the federal level, in order to advocate best for the student union and its members, and if that will include Brantford as well.
So in terms of specifics around there, I actually have more, like coming into the year, I had more specific ideas with respect to Brantford. I know we did do some work just going into the election in terms of advocating just for students to get out there and vote. And that'll obviously happen again. Come, I believe the next election's on October 24th. So that'll kind of be the same style. I know her and her AVP are also attending Town and Gown every chance they can get. But with respect to the specifics, I know that one issue that students were vocal about when I was kind of gathering information for my campaign was that, students didn't always feel the safest or don't always feel the safest walking around at night in Brantford. And I think in terms of like what an exact solution could be and how exactly they would go about, implementing certain things, like those are discussions that remain to be had. But like in my head, I see something like, getting better lighting for the sidewalks in Brantford just to kind of light things up a little bit better. And I feel like that speaks to something that might make students feel more comfortable. But again, that's kind of, those are advocacy pieces, and haven't got around to those ones just yet.
Yeah, I just kind of just want to voice the opinion that the student union should make sure that it's active in those discussions, whether it be at the city, municipal, provincial, and the federal level, in order to best advocate not only for like the safety issues, but issues that affect the membership as a whole. So thank you.
Okay. Phil, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to point out to the board that the Students' Union does actively advocate with local politicians, both on municipal and provincial level. The federal level, we definitely have a lot of communication with them, but there's not a ton of interaction and advocacy because largely the funding for post-secondary for undergrads is done on the provincial level. So most of the advocacy efforts, but not all, where government is concerned, is focused on provincial and municipal. And those will come into focus on both our campuses, if not all three campuses, as municipal elections will be coming up this fall. Every year, we've got an annual strategy of priorities within that department, within those levels of government. We try on the provincial level to be multi-campus about it and try not to be too campus specific, whereas in the municipal, we definitely have different priorities on both campuses and actively advocate for both communities and what will eventually become all three communities. Just want to make sure that that's known.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Ian, you can go ahead.
Thanks. I can give a few other examples as well. So on the municipal front, in Brantford, our AVP of Government and Stakeholder Relations is a board member with the Grand Valley Educational Society. So what that does is work in conjunction with the city of Brantford, some of the other post-secondary education institutes in that community, works on advocating for specific goals, acts as a forum for a lot of those advocacy conversations. In Waterloo, we have a similar functionality, but that happens on a bit of a different committee, which is the Town and Gown Association, which exists in a number of different communities that have post-secondary education organizations. So they'll similarly meet with members of council and regional council as well to coordinate those efforts at the municipal level. So for each community, we have a bit of a tailored approach based on the forums where those conversations are happening. And then we also have fairly regular touch points with in Waterloo, city and regional councilors, and then in Brantford, city councilors as well. Oftentimes our AVP, who's based in Brantford, will go to things like the downtown Brantford business improvement area meetings, so that they're kind of actively participating in conversations on the ground level, both like right literally in the community that the campus is housed, as well as some of the broader issues impacting that community. So we have a very multi-campus, but tailored specific to the issues that are impacting both campuses. And then in the new year, the department runs a local advocacy week. So what happens with that, and some of you may have an opportunity to participate, as we're always looking for volunteers. We put together a series of advocacy topics, and then we'll book meetings primarily with regional and city councilors, but often members of provincial parliament and members of parliament as well, and take those issues to those members, give student voice to some of those prominent issues, again, both kind of localized as well as the things that are impacting, whether it be provincial funding packages or some of the federal scholarships, federal accessibility funding that does come into play at the institutional level. And then one of our major partnerships is we are a member school of the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance. So that's a group of a number of institutions that kind of collectively put together their weight and are a very serious advocacy player on the provincial scene. So a lot of our work kind of works in conjunction with some of those bigger bodies that allow us to leverage more voices on particular topics. So that's a snapshot of some of the kind of major components, but we're active at all three levels, and depending on the year, what topics are kind of at play, our priorities will vary. This year in particular, with a couple different elections going on, it's a lot about voter engagement, letting people know there are elections happening, and then encouraging people to vote, as you'll soon see for the coming municipal elections in October.
Thank you very much. I just want to make sure that this union is operating at the maximum capacity in terms of advocacy, especially on these very real issues that we have, especially in Brantford regarding safety. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ian. And thank you very much, Director Abu Rashid, for your questions. Are there any other questions for the president? Okay, as I see none, we'll be moving on to the comments from the Executive Director and COO, Mr. Champagne. Take it away.
Yep, not a lot to add beyond what was added to the agenda package. Ultimately, operationally, we are going through the summer, which is all about planning and getting ready for fall. As of July 1st, the university has paused its mask mandate, so you're no longer required to wear a face covering on university campus, knock on wood, until further notice. Ultimately, the major focus for us, major projects include orientation week, as well as, come on, Brain, you can do it, Wilson, the hospitality unit on the Waterloo campus. And we are undertaking a new website project that is currently in beta in an effort to be able to better and more effectively communicate to students. Other than that, it's just business as usual. We have hired a programming and events manager, and she started earlier in the summer, Megan Bagley. We have a promotions manager who is starting, I believe, tomorrow morning, Grace Cho. And we are in the process of hiring a facilities, I believe the title is operations manager, which is ultimately the person who helps us go through all our work orders and make sure that the university is on the up and up in terms of what they're charging and assessing and maintaining our buildings and our spaces. And we're hoping to have that person in place, hopefully as early as end of this month. Other than that, business as usual.
Okay, thank you very much. I see Vice Chair Phillips has his hand raised. Take it away.
Yeah, just a quick question. Any updates on hiring for the board secretary / secretaries?
So to the best of my knowledge, we had 8 candidates apply. I'm not entirely sure where we are with that hiring process. I believe that committee needs to kind of schedule a meeting to be able to get together, comprised almost exclusively of board members, and coordinate with our HR consultant, Shauna Y, to be able to set up interviews. So I believe the chair should be able to update if they're any further along on that process or not.
Yes, I can guarantee that we will be striking a meeting very soon to go over the cover letters and the resumes in order to pick the secretary. It hasn't happened yet, but it will happen before the next meeting.
I have a quick question about this topic.
Sure. go ahead.
Will we review the cover letters and then invite qualified candidates to interview, or will we interview all of them?
Phil, go ahead.
So typically, you would review to pick who you want to interview. I wouldn't put 8 interviews on anybody. That's a lot of interviews. We would definitely want to whittle that down, ideally to 3 or 4, and see what we have. And then ultimately, that committee that's already been struck will decide who's ultimately going to be the secretary. And if there is a viable second candidate, that would likely be the person that we would charge with the task of catching us up with the board minutes that are missing from last year's board.
Okay, are there any further questions for the executive director and COO? Okay, as I see none, we'll be moving on to the fall meeting schedule. So I did send this file to everybody yesterday night, but just in case you don't have it, I will share my screen. Oh, it says the host has disabled participant screen sharing. Ian, if you can enable it, that'd be great.
Yes, just one second. Should be able to now.
Can everyone see my screen? Okay, perfect. So this is a broad overview of the schedule for the year. As you can see, it goes from July until April. So let's start off with the internal monitoring reports. I have put the monitoring reports AL2J, AL2M, GP2E, GP2H, otherwise known as the reimbursements for volunteer staff, vice chair's role. I put these all in July, August, and September. I just hope to just bang these all out in the beginning months of the year, just so we can get some logistical things in order. Next up, starting in November, when we have to approve the audited financial statements, that's when I plan to have all of the election appeals committees in the financial conditions committees, so that we're more comfortable and we can take on some more of the bigger tasks of the board. By this point, we should have somewhat of a financial statement. This is why I plan to put the financial committees at this time of the year. And over here, we can see BMD 1 and BMD number 2.1 are put in February, March, and April, just to finish up some of the tasks of the year and to finally approve the budget for the 2022-2023 year. Next up is elections. So we have to approve the elections policy before the election cycle every year. So I plan to do that in October, which will come before the referendum questions come on the table and before the candidates come forward. So we can approve the elections policy before the election cycle gets started. Next up, we have the report of the referendum questions. Please be reminded, I know this is already on, but if you have any referendum questions, they have to be submitted at least 35 days prior to the November board meeting. This is in line with GP number 2J. By December, I plan to have approved the SU sponsored referendum questions, and by January, plan to have the election period. Within November and December, I believe that's the time period. I may be wrong, but I plan to hire the CRO within that time. Please correct me if I am incorrect. In March and April, we plan to train the new board elect. And in order to fully ensure that the board-elect is trained in the best way possible, we plan to have them come to at least 1 or 2 meetings, those meetings being in March and April, so that they would know the procedures of the board, they can see how we run things for a couple of meetings before they're thrown into the water. Next up, we have ownership consultations. This is also to be finalized. In this month, before the next board meeting, very shortly after this meeting, actually, I plan to strike up the ownership linkage spring term committee. We plan to have a discussion as to what we're going to do and an implementation strategy for the summer. The same thing is going to happen in September, except this implementation strategy is going to go on for October and November, and ideally December as well. And in January, we'll go through the same paradigm of having the discussion to discover what we're going to do in in January, and then the implementation strategy from February to April. The strategic discussions, which will once again be finalized. We have the governance budget, which will be approved or hopefully be approved in August. I plan to get that to you before the next meeting. Orientation week involvement and board EDI training, as mentioned previously. The previous board wanted us to go through EDI training. That will happen in September when all of our schedules will be finalized and we can easily schedule something and get that done quickly. Report and performance evaluations from the board, from the 2021 and 22 board directors. Plan to have that in October. Review of the remuneration of the office of the president. As you can see, this is a bit different from the board presidential reviews. We'll go over that a little bit more in future meetings. However, there is somewhat of a difference there. And the rest is for now to be determined, except for the board and presidential reviews, which will happen once in December and once in April, one for each term. The invited guests so far are Chris Turner to help out with the finance committees to explain what they are, what they do, things and tasks that need to be done. In September, Eden Hennessy or Lauren Burrows from CSCDI. I plan to have these in September because it would coincide with our EDI training. The Dean of Students in October, Evan Lawrence. We have him here every year, so I thought that it would be a great addition to have him come in again and just speak about what they do, what their relationship is to the board, and how they can help us. Now, one-on-one consultations between former chairs and directors. I understand this will be somewhat complicated to organize. However, I am pretty confident that there will be at least a few directors from the previous board who will be open to this, and if not a direct one-on-one consultation, at least somewhat of a Q&A session or general advice that they can give, something about a mentorship role that they could provide for the board. In December, I have Ivan Joseph, the VP of Student Affairs. Ivan Joseph is terrific. He is a great addition to the school, and I would like him to come in and speak about what he does and how he can help us out. And the rest are TBD. If you have any recommendations, please reach out to me. Please reach out to Vice Chair Phillips, and we can schedule that as soon as possible. Right now, are there any questions related to the schedule? All right, Director Boucher, go ahead.
Just before I forget, but I did have a couple suggestions for different people that we can invite to speak to the board. Of that would be the president of the university. I think that would be a good idea. Maybe potentially at least sending invites to the mayors of both cities. I think that would make a good impression, as well as aid in potential advocacy efforts with both of the cities. Maybe say even like the chair of the region of Waterloo. I think that's what they're called. Other potential influential people would be probably a good idea, just so that one, they know that we're here, and two, get some advice on how to better advocate for ourselves. I think that would be something that the board should consider.
Okay, thank you very much, Director Boucher. Director Bottinger, go ahead.
I was wondering if we could get the mentorship between former chairs and directors before, so we could be able to use that for majority of our term as board directors, I'd say. I think it'd be more valued to be sooner than later.
Well, 100% we can do that. What does the board think of switching the Chris Turner discussion and the one-on-one consultation? So Chris Turner in November, which is when the finance stuff happens anyways, and the one-on-one consultations in August. Director Phillips, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think that makes more sense anyways.
Any other thoughts on it? Director Boucher?
I would motion that we switch the one-on-one consultations and the Chris Turner event.
Okay, I don't think we need to motion, but I can definitely just switch it around, send a new copy, and we can go from there. Are there any other comments, questions, recommendations? Okay, as I see none, I'll stop the share. And I'll get to making that new draft as soon as possible and send it to directors after the meeting concludes. Next up, I will turn the mic over to Vice Chair Phillips to speak on the ad hoc honorarium committee.
Yes, so just a brief update from me today. No reports as of yet. However, just so everybody's on the same page, we are discussing how to compensate the chair for their work, or how to pick up from the compensation that was previously provided to the chair and figure out what exactly we want to do regarding that. For anyone that doesn't know, board members can't be paid members of the organization, or they are now an employee, and that's a conflict of interest. So that the chair was initially a paid role that was taken away by the previous board. And now we are looking at implementing a new operations role called the Governance and Elections Coordinator. We're still refining details on that right now, but they'll essentially pick up from what the chair used to do in a way that is more operationally focused. So the chair can focus on organizing board meetings, making sure that we're following all the government procedures and practices as required, and the governance and elections coordinator can focus on organizing and running the elections, working a little more closely with the CRO, and assembling those agenda packages, because it's a lot of work for one person to be doing as a volunteer. That's kind of the direction we're heading right now. I would love to hear any thoughts anybody has. But otherwise, yeah, we will be looking to meet at least once before next meeting, hopefully twice if we need it, and have a report for the August board meeting for approval. Any questions?
Just a statement. I wish you the best in that writing that report. I have full confidence that that the vice chair will come with great suggestions and a good framework for the board to work on.
Thank you very much. Well, I think that is all for me then. Back to you, Chair Delegate Iche.
Okay, thank you very much, Vice Chair Phillips. Next up, I believe we will be motioning to the in-camera session. Can I have a motion on the table for the board of directors to enter in camera? Okay. Motion by Director Lafacciola and seconded by Director Murphy. Would you like to speak to your motions? Any discussion on the matter? Are there any abstentions to the vote? Any opposition? Okay, as I see none, the motion passes with unanimous consent, and we will be entering